My jealous sister-in-law made a comment about my dead daughter, and everyone is telling me to forgive her. Plus update. My jealous sister-in-law made a comment about my dead daughter, and everyone is telling me to forgive her. My wife and I have been together for 5 years and we have always known that we wanted a big family. Because we were Christian, we didn't start until after marriage. She got pregnant 3 months after we were married and we had our first baby boy. Only a year later, after our first was born, we had our daughter. A year after that we had our second son. And finally 2 years after that we had our second daughter. However, this pregnancy was different from the last ones. During this pregnancy, my wife was constantly complaining about her back pains and how she was constantly sore all the time. During the delivery, the doctors realized that she had a tumor in her uterus and they had to do immediate surgery. Luckily, my wife made it out incredibly healthy and well, but the doctors informed us that it would be impossible for us to have any more kids. She had postpartum depression after finding this out because she felt like she was letting me down and not giving me the big family I wanted. But I assured her that it was absolutely fine. Even with my constant reassurance, her depression didn't get any better for a couple more months. She was supposed to get maternity leave for only 3 months, but decided to stay for 7 months. I decided to reach out to my brother because we were very close. He has always been a great role model and older brother to me. However, his wife seems to not like me or my wife for some reason. She is always comparing her kids to ours and making comments about how unhealthy our firstborn boy's life is since he is already a national chess master. She says that he should be enjoying his life doing kid stuff, not on some geeky board. But we have already had this conversation with our son and he absolutely loves chess, and the fact that he is good at it doesn't change anything in his average life. She also likes to make comments about my daughters as well. But me and my wife don't seem to mind for the most part. My brother says it because she is pregnant, so she is being emotional. My brother helped us out a lot with general things around the house, which made life a lot easier. Now, I absolutely love my wife and she is the greatest human and mother to live on the face of this planet. However, she would sometimes be a bit uncautious with the kids. This didn't happen with our first baby, but I think with all her emotions bottled up after the second pregnancy it made her a bit emotionally preoccupied. Sometimes she would forget the stove was on and I had to turn it off to make sure the house didn't explode, but I never told her about how she needed to be a bit more aware because I knew she was already struggling with so much. That's when it happened. One day while I was at work, my wife decided to take the kids to the park. My daughter got hit by a car and after 6 hours of emergency surgery, she sadly did not make it. My wife doesn't have a good recollection of what happened, nor do I want to talk about it on this platform, but it was the most traumatic experience of my life. My wife and I have been dealing with it for the past 4 months and even though we are suffering inside, we have to keep up for our kids. Now, this is also about the time that my brother's wife invited all of our family to a pool party at their place. My wife and I thought it would be a good idea for our kids to socialize with their cousins. My whole family was there and they were all extremely supportive of me and my wife. They all gave their condolences and were super polite about it except for my brother's wife. Apparently, according to my brother, it was again just the fact that her emotions were out of whack because of her pregnancy, but my wife never acted like this. Still, we all tried to enjoy ourselves, and the kids were certainly having a great time at my brother's gigantic pool. That's until the kids started playing pranks on us. The kids pushed me into the pool while I was by the edge. I did think this was funny, but then they started taking things too far by damaging me and my wife's brand new Tesla. We calmly explained to all of the kids, including my nephews, why these types of pranks were not acceptable. In the middle of me lecturing them, my brother's wife stepped in and started shouting at me and my wife. She told us that we have no grounds to talk to their children, and that it was probably all my children's fault anyway. My wife obviously was not having it and said that the children were the ones that actually did the damage. Things escalated more and more until some other family members came to see the commotion. That's when my brother's wife dropped a bomb and said, "Maybe this is why your daughter is dead." My wife started crying and left, whereas I stayed and demanded an explanation. What happened next was even crazier though. Update: after my nephews and kids tried pulling a prank and damaged my brand new Tesla, I tried lecturing my kids and my nephews. But in the middle of my lecture my brother's wife stepped in and got into an argument with my wife, and it got to a point where my brother's wife made a comment about our dead daughter, who recently passed away. My wife left crying whereas I stayed and demanded an explanation. My brother and parents had to take me to a different room to calm me parents, and I demanded that my brother go and make his wife give one hell of an apology. My brother and parents kept on repeating to me that although they understand the situation, that my brother's wife was pregnant, and making her apologize would be very bad for her considering her condition. They also said that it wasn't her fault that she had to get such hormonal differences, and that I should forgive her. At that point I was shocked. My brother, who was my role model and the person that was one of the most sympathetic people, had just told me to forgive someone that just insulted my wife and disrespected my dead daughter. Furthermore, my parents were okay with this. I had never ever seen this side of my brother or my parents, and so that's when I gave them an ultimatum. I told them either his wife would apologize and not be invited to further family functions, or else my brother and parents would never be able to see their nephews or grandchildren ever again. I told them that we would leave the state and go absolutely no contact with them for the rest of their life. That's when they paused and looked anxious, and I could tell that if it was taking this long for them to decide, it wasn't worth staying for their response. I took my kids and left the house. That's when my brother texted in the family group chat. But what he texted shocked me to my core, and I couldn't believe what was going to happen next. My fiancé wants me to get rid of my backup plan. I have always had a backup plan. My backup plan includes a place to live, money for general expenses, and a rainy day fund. It's more complicated than that, but that's the gist of it. I like having it, and I have explained to previous partners that I have one, and I let them decide if they're okay with it. My fiancé knew this before he started dating me exclusively. He knew that if we ever got married, I would require a prenuptial agreement and a request that this backup plan stays intact. A couple days ago, he told me he wasn't okay with this plan any longer. I don't think that's fair that he comes from a wealthy family and the prenuptial agreement protects him, and I should have something that protects me. I'm actually finding myself really angry about this because I was an open book about this every step of the way, and now I feel like Hess changed his mind. He says that having this plan makes it seem like I will leave him while I think it protects me. I'm annoyed because it's not fair to me to change your mind when you knew my expectations from the very beginning. I love him, but my dad is a divorce lawyer, and from what I've heard and seen, better to protect yourself and not need it than no protection and then have to pick up the pieces. Both of our parents agree that a prenuptial is needed. I'm not getting rid of this plan. To clarify some things about my backup plan, I called it that because I started it at 25. I have had it for about 10 years now. I'm in my mid-30s. It is an emergency savings account, another savings account, and a property I own. I use my main job to pay for my household expenses with my fiancé and also to fill my main savings. I have a trust but also investments as well, but my dad helps me handle those. The emergency savings is only money from additional contract jobs I take on in my profession. The other savings account is only money from rental income, some of which I use to maintain the property and pay my dad back. The property is a multi-family home and I rent out all the units but one. The property was bought by my dad when I was 24 and I have been paying him back the purchase price with no interest for a couple of years now. The property is worth a great amount now, but my dad would only accept what he paid for it from me. He took out a loan from me because he wanted me to be set up financially in paying him back, even though he already paid the loan off a long time ago. There's no way I would be able to buy that property now or even 5 years ago, since house prices have skyrocketed where I live, and I'm grateful that my dad did that for me. I will finally pay off the loan in about 8 months and before I get married. It's taken me so long to pay my dad back because he insisted that I prioritize setting myself up financially rather than paying him back. The property is also a 15 minutes walk to the nearest hospital and close to the city center, so it is easy to rent out to medical students. I keep one unit open because of events. I make a killing when there are events or when big artists tour, and 2 examples are the recent Beyoncé and Taylor Swift tours where I made a lot on the days they were in my city. If there are no events where I think I can make a good amount, I rent it out to travel nurses in 3 to 4 month periods once or twice a year, but realistically there could be a couple weeks or 2 to 3 continuous months during the year where it sits empty. Overall though, I make a substantial amount from this property. I can't take credit for this strategy because my dad is the one who helped me set up the apartments and manage it. My partner and I come from vastly different economic backgrounds. His family has generational wealth and he can't remember a time they didn't. I grew up firmly middle class until my parents' divorce, and then it was a struggle for a while. His home life was relatively stable with a mom and dad. On the other hand, my dad tried his best, but my birth mom made my childhood tumultuous both emotionally and mentally. The difference with how we think about money became very noticeable when we were planning our wedding. We had been discussing what type of flowers we would like, and then I started talking about the budget and stated that I thought 30-40K was good overall to pay for a wedding in an amount where we could easily afford it. He thought I meant 30-40K for flowers, and he and his parents didn't budget the amount and just said okay. I clarified what I meant, and I would never ever pay that amount for just flowers. When it comes to the plan, my fiancé knew about it as soon as we were exclusive. I don't agree with people saying I shouldn't have told him. To protect my assets in the prenuptial agreement, I had to. I also told him because I felt he deserved to know. As we got more serious, especially with marriage, I told him more after talking to my dad and finding out what was okay to say so that he understood the extent of the plan. The reason I kept saying the backup plan was complicated was due to the prenup my dad came up with. It is very long and protects me very well, and my fiancé was in his view not prepared for the extent of it. My dad and I went to this extent due to what he had seen people do in divorces, but also